G'day, and welcome to Say It With Guitars. I'm your host, Pete Cornelius. Each episode, I'll be digging deep and getting to hang with some of Australia's finest guitar pickers, songwriters, producers, collectors, and makers. I look forward to bringing you these fun conversations, and I hope you enjoy Say It With Guitars.
Hey there, legends. Thanks again for joining us. Hopefully you've had a listen to the Bill Chambers episode. Quite an interesting dude. And you can still catch Bill on tour with Casey around the traps. And speaking of tour, I'm on the road again, folks. Yep, heading off to Melbourne and surrounding areas, and then heading off to Adelaide and surrounding areas. So a couple more weeks of album launch shows. Had a great time at the Cronulla Jazz and Blues Festival. Managed to get up on stage with Charlie Acourt from Canada and Mr. Ray Beadle. They were doing a little gig at the Brass Monkey, and got to sit in on some classic tunes and had myself a great time. So today's guest, folks, is a legendary guitar player from the Hey Hey It's Saturday band, Mr. Simon Patterson. Simon's been down here in Tassie for quite a while now, and I remember meeting him up at the Newstead College Summer Rock Music School, and he was our tutor for the particular week. I learnt a lot from him, and it was great to interact with someone of his calibre too as a young kid. He was always so welcoming and supportive, and I'm pretty honoured to have a chat with him here today. Hope you enjoy it. Before we crack into today's show, I'd love to shout out to our Season 4 sponsors, Tarrant Guitars and Top Shelf Guitars. The custom workshop of award-winning luthier Billy Tarrant on the northwest coast of Tasmania uses locally and internationally sourced solid tone woods to create a wide range of custom guitars, including acoustic, electric, lap steel guitars and specialty instruments, showcasing his passion for superior tone and structural integrity. Tassie's one-stop custom workshop for custom-made guitars, all guitar repairs and services. Check out tarrantguitars.net.au. Top Shelf Instruments specialises in used and vintage guitars, pedals and amps, shipping worldwide from Hobart, Tasmania, Australia. We love helping players land exceptional instruments for manageable dollars, and guitars from Japan hold a special place in our hearts. New old guitars hit the website almost daily, so head on over to the website for this week's weird and wonderful offerings, topshelfinstruments.com.au. All right, I'd like to welcome to today's chat on Say It With Guitars, Simon Patterson. Simon, how you going?
Very well, Pete. Thank you very much for the invite.
Oh, pleasure.
Yeah.
Pleasure. Thank you for jumping on board.
Pleasure.
There's some great pickers on the show, and
Yeah, I've seen a bit of a list. So gosh, you got some heavyweights. So,
yeah.
Boy.
Yeah, it's been a fun project.
I bet.
This whole podcast thing. It definitely wasn't something I was born to do, but I feel that it's been a nice challenge and networking and just everyone's got a great story.
Yeah, and so many people in the guitar community.
Yeah, there's a few out there, and I'm meeting people everywhere I go.
Yeah, that's sensational.
And I look forward to doing a few more festivals this year and packing up some mics and
absolutely
chatting with some more folks around the country.
Well, it's a nice thing to document too, like actually talking to various people, because unless you do that,
there's so many unheard stories
just
and
drift off into the distance, and no one's aware of the history or anything.
Yeah, and so many great players just don't get the credit that I think they deserve. So I feel that I'm kind of doing my bit.
Oh, good on you. I think it's lovely to get back like that, Pete. So credit to you.
Yeah, so tell me, mate, what's happening? I noticed today you've got some more students to go on.
Yes, there's always a bit of teaching on the go.
Is that your main gig these days?
There's a lot of teaching,
yep.
So which I enjoy, and there's, again, it's that thing of passing on. So however, you can help people realise what they want to do. That's more what I'm about these days, I think.
Great.
So it almost becomes a bit of a producer's role, just trying to recognise some of the strengths they've got going, what they want to develop, where they'd like to take it maybe, and trying to find their voice a bit,
Perfect.
which as opposed to it being a one box, fits all. It's
Yep.
certainly, I think I like too many styles of music as well, so it's nice if you can just sort of help people get a bit further down the road or just offer a little bit of something there. So
Great.
so yeah, that's good, and that balances out with some playing and attempts at trying to get another CD finished as well, Pete.
Yeah. Awesome.
attempts at, gosh, not as prolific as you are, mate.
Oh, yeah, it's a long game. It's a long game. So tell me about that. What's in the pipeline?
Well,
have you been working with a bunch of players down here?
Yeah,
Or-
it's actually more old mates in Melbourne,
Okay.
who've we've done a few CDs. So that's Craig Newman, the bass player, and Jerry Pantasis, the drummer.
Yep.
So we've done a few CDs together, and I think we've got about 4 or 5 tracks at the moment. So
Great.
but it's the old art of flying files in, when people
Yeah.
are, they're ridiculously busy, those guys. So, I'll just send them some guitar beds and,
Yep.
they'll just do their thing,
And material that you've come up with? Like
Yeah,
your
pretty.
own
It's all
stuff?
original stuff, and of course they contribute and
Yep.
make half my playing sound remotely reasonable or remotely in time. There's that as well. So,
So how do you go with that? Do you, like when you say you put a guitar bed down, are you like click track stuff or you got like a little drum loop?
yeah,
or-
look, I'll just dive into GarageBand a fair bit, and just get a groove going.
Yep.
Play some pretty ordinary guide bass, and
Yep.
just flesh out the guitar parts. That's not too bad. So, and that covers the click
Yeah.
side of things. So,
Yep.
but the guys they're very, very good at playing, overdub world and still
Yeah.
making it sound believable. Like
Yep.
might have been in the room, or they're good at that. So
Quite an art.
yeah, they're particularly good at that.
Sounding
those
real
guys,
within that environment.
So they've done so much of that. They've
Yep.
got really good home setups. So
Yep.
Jerry's drums sound fantastic. He'll send me back a stereo file, and it's right down to there'll be verb on it and
Yeah,
pretty
right.
much EQ'd, like
Ready to go.
Just
Push the fader
slide
up.
it in, and and they're really good at balancing sounds against what I do with layers too on the guitar. So
Yep.
yeah, so that all seems to work. So.
Great. And do you approach that initial guitar track as a final guitar, like, or are you sort of thinking this will hold the glue, like this will be glue for now, and then later I'll kind of like come up with some better tones or parts?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, once or twice I might get a part, especially from Jerry, or I might rethink what I've done there. I thought, I can get something to interact a little bit better.
Yeah.
But they're pretty good at the interaction thing as well. So, but I kind of don't mind things being a snapshot too, Pete. So that's what it was at that point in time, and like the amp, the guitar, the pedals might vary from track to track, and I kind of don't mind doing that as well.
Yeah.
So, it's not like there's a one signature thing, I think,
Yeah, I think that snapshot idea is such a great way to think about
Right,
it.
yeah.
Because projects can go on for months or years.
Oh, years.
And sometimes, hearing, remember that guitar I played on that track? I don't have that anymore. I sold or that pedal or whatever. And
Totally.
And it's just that part of time, and even the way that you write songs or the way that you perform a song is going to change from day to day, let alone 6 months or a year or whatever.
Exactly,
So
yeah.
if you can embrace that, I think that's such a treat, because it's,
Yeah.
with our home recording setups, it's so easy to go, I'll just fix that, like,
Exactly, yeah.
and then nothing ever happens.
Yeah, no, you're right there. I try to also go for a performance thing if I can. And if it's the main guitar part, I'll try and do that right through.
Awesome.
Warts and all.
Great.
Plus my editing's rubbish, so that's the other side of it. So, you can all, you tend to know a performance, don't you? So if you can try to get that, I think it's a bit more authentic if I can. You know? So,
That's great.
Yeah, so that's always been something that I've enjoyed, a bit like most of us do home recordings. And, it's very rare we get into a big studio these days, isn't it, with, budgets and all the rest. So you're there forever trying to, just keep your interest and
Yep.
You know, I mean, you've done so many CDs yourself, and
So speaking of keeping interest, what is it that, like, how do you keep the wheels turning in that regard? Like, are you constantly listening to new material, or you going back to stuff that you
mean my own material?
Or no, just in general, just on your
Yep.
instrument, on your guitar. Like,
Yeah, I'm listening all the time, you know. I had Jeff Beck on this morning.
Great.
Just around the house, you know.
Yep.
And it's funny, I'll get on a bit of a lean on one player for a while. I definitely do that. I'm sure we all do to some degree.
Yeah.
Or just follow a thread, that's the other thing, you know. Been thinking a lot of David Lindley lately.
Oh, yeah.
Because I actually got to see David live, and it's one of the most extraordinary things I've ever seen, you know.
Wow.
He just had Wally Ingram on drums, just the two of them, and it was breathtaking, you know. That would have been mid-90s, I think.
Sure.
At the Continental Cafe in Prahran in Melbourne.
Wow.
And just spectacular, you know. I wish you could have heard him. I wish everyone could have heard David, because it's just so extraordinary.
Magical player.
Oh, and just so three-dimensional, you know.
Yep.
So
And just him and a drummer.
just him and a drummer.
Wow.
And just, you were spellbound, you know. Yeah, I had another mutual friend that was there. I didn't even know he was there that night, and he said exactly the same sort of things that I'd noted about it. But
Yep.
yeah, so you know, I'll get on a bit of a roll. Sometimes I'll pick up a Guitar Player magazine or something, and
Yep.
oh, David Gilmour, great, you know, the new recording, and just dive down that for a while, and you know, something like that will wash over me, you know.
Yeah. Yep. And do you like does that rub off just from being around, or just actively listening to that kind of music, or do you sit down and go, all right, cool, I'm going to get on this train today of the Gilmour approach and listen to tones? And
yeah, sometimes I think that does, you know. I kind of like to let it wash over me, I think, as well, you know, so that it's, you know, it's that influence in the background or something, you know, or inspiration. That might be the other way to view it, I guess, Pete, too. So I'm sort of, you know, taking what I will with that, you know. But sometimes it's nice, you know, if I actually sit down and actively, you know, try a few licks or a few solos, you know, just to get inside that driver's seat sort of space, you know, with a bit of that. Because, I just find it almost recalibrates some things for myself, you know, just thinking about time and sense of phrasing, and you know what I mean, just absorbing a bit more vocabulary perhaps, you know, and things like that.
Yep.
You know, and sometimes even individual songs, you know. I think more recently, On Your Way Down, we had to play that again with Mumbo Gumbo. It's a song everyone plays, of course, but you know, then I started to dive into Little Feat.
Yeah.
And is it Scott Sharon who's the latest front guy for Little Feat?
I'm not sure.
Incredible player. It's like, wow, this guy's really copped Lowell George. Just amazing, you know. And sings amazing too. So it's like, wow.
Okay.
So, you know, sometimes I'll just explore something and just see where it takes me, you know, and think, oh, I need to get inside that tune a lot more, or just see if I can find something else there to move away from my, you know, any sort of set format, you know, and just, you know, there's got to be more going on there.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, that's so great. And it's a great trip to sort of go down that, you know, like an artist, like you have to learn a song for a gig or whatever, and then that just sparks like a whole new love or appreciation for a certain player or a band or a genre, and then next minute you're deep in the weeds of, you know, YouTube and
totally. You know, I can think of sometimes. I think I saw a Brian Ray interview for Gibson Guitar TV,
right?
And it was the one where they'd interviewed Brian at his house in Palm Springs. He's got the Les Paul shaped swimming pool.
Oh, wow.
And but that'll lead me on to Paul McCartney, you know, and because I just love that current band that Paul's got, the way those guys interpret the Beatles.
Yes.
Him and Rusty and Abe Jr. on drums. It's just, you know, so I'll just follow threads, you know.
Yeah.
Go down a rabbit hole as we all do. You know,
and how about early days? Like what angle, like what sort of players or styles got you into guitar in the early days?
Yeah, it's funny because I I really liked Hank Marvin when I was quite young.
Sure.
Yeah, and the first band that we tried to put together in the garage was playing Shadows tunes.
Wow.
Without a bass player too.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I was really into that. It must have been that sense of melody, I think, and that tone, I think, from Hank. So
Wow. Okay.
yeah, that's. I don't know how I got onto that, but I did.
Yep.
And then, of course, Dad actually liked a lot of jazz, so I'd always heard a lot of Django. He bought quite a few records too, you know, some Joe Pass things, Al Di Meola, a host of different things, Herb Ellis, Barney Kessel. So
Beautiful.
I heard a lot of that stuff fairly early on, as well as, well, when I was a kid, Van Halen had just hit as well.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
like the first few years of that. So, yeah, it was quite diverse, I guess, what I was getting into, because you had Hendrix and Led Zeppelin, being aware of all those sort of things as well.
Yep.
But jazz was certainly something that I was quite interested in as well, and that became a bit of a focus too, I guess.
Yep.
You know, and I mean, the first gig I ever got to see was John McLaughlin.
First gig.
Yeah, I was 12. Dad took me to see that, and it was the band after the Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Oh my!
So it was just crazy, you know.
Wow. Where was that?
That was at the Palais Theatre in Melbourne. You know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So.
What a trip.
Oh yeah, I didn't understand any of it.
No.
As you would. I mean, it took a mate, and he went to sleep. He just shut down. It was so loud.
Yes.
John's JCM 800 was floored. You know.
Wow.
Dad reckoned his ears rang for a week, I think.
Yep.
But, yeah, so I got to see that, and then Joe Pass I saw with Oscar Peterson a few years later.
With Oscar. Oh.
Yeah.
Incredible.
So I got to see a lot of things. Lee Ridner, I saw him when I was about 15.
Okay.
So I guess at that point in time, that fusion thing was also becoming apparent too. So,
yeah.
And I really did enjoy jazz. So, but then I heard Larry Carlton, and that really turned my head around there a lot.
Okay.
So I guess some of those players, Robin Ford and probably Lee Ritner. So, I really was quite aware of some of those guys, and
Yep.
and just sort of thinking of how that fit together with blues and jazz and
Yep.
various elements there,
Yep.
Pete. So, but I was pretty diehard on the jazz thing when I was, about 15 or 16, and then, trying to develop that out to a more fusion rock thing, because, you couldn't really grow up at that time and not be affected by rock, really.
Oh, absolutely.
I just liked all these different things, and then I'd hear Albert Lee playing with Eric Clapton and go, oh, wow, that country thing's amazing too,
Yeah.
So it was pretty diverse when I think about it.
So great.
I liked a lot of things.
Yep.
And it was interesting because some of the people I'd hang with or get lessons with were very specific with genres, and
Okay.
Hendrix was a real no-no to the jazz guys, and they're all mutually exclusive, I think. So
Yep.
Whereas I just liked it all, I think, genuinely did.
So you mentioned getting lessons. Was that kind of your first way in, like in
think
terms
so.
of getting to know your instrument?
Yeah. Look, I got lessons from day one. So,
Okay.
And it was pretty ordinary, but I was learning to read music. That's one interesting facet with what happened career-wise. But
Yep.
I was learning to read as I was learning to play, so that happened. And then I guess that jazz side of things meant some of that thing, I needed to get lessons there for that. So
Yep.
that was just the path I chose,
Great.
The rock thing, of course, was more by ear, definitely, for sure, and all those sort of things, piecing that together. But, I was really keen to try to develop improvisation, and could play sort of a ham-fisted version of other people's stuff, but I was trying to work out how to actually get through this myself,
Sure.
create my own things. So,
Yep.
So, I'd had some really good tuition at a place in Melbourne, and they based a lot of things off the Berkeley College of Music. So,
Okay.
it's that die-hard jazz thing, and reading music.
Yep.
And I was sort of becoming aware that Larry Carlton and those guys were session players. So I had some silly notion that maybe I could, aim at a freelance / session sort of player thing somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Definitely great skills. Probably not as vital now, I don't think. Like things are different, I suppose.
Totally gone, Pete.
In the current environment.
Forget it.
But I guess, back, what are we talking, sort of mid-80s?
Yeah, so
90s?
I'd say that'd be early 80s, that period of tuition and, formative period there.
Yeah.
And my first gigs, because my family had moved to Hobart from Victoria about 82, so my first gig was a bebop jazz gig with Fred Bradshaw and Steve Martin, and just a guitar, bass and sax, and playing Charlie Parker stuff and standards. So,
wow, sure.
So, so that was great because I had opportunities to play with guys down here that I probably wouldn't have got in Melbourne or Sydney at that stage. So, that was a really nice thing there, as well as cover bands and all sorts of things there, before I decided, I went to the Sydney Con, had to go up and audition for that, and moved to Sydney when I was, 19? So,
right.
Yeah, so,
okay, sure.
Yeah, so I moved up
So you
there.
studied there for a few years?
Yeah, did the jazz course up there. And, that was cool because, I did gigs with Kate Sobrano up there.
Yep.
Did a Bushwhackers tour.
Yep.
Tommy actually played with us on the final gig of the tour.
Yeah, cool.
That was a bit scary. He doesn't even remember it.
Really?
I've since mentioned it to him. He goes, "No, I don't remember that at all."
Yeah, right.
I said, "Well, I was pretty forgettable when you're at Tommy." So yeah, but yeah, lots of good things there and jazz things. And quite a few sessions. Pete Northcote was very generous to me.
Sure.
Rex Go and Clive Lendich, and Jim Kelly was as well. Jim's just such a great player, That was a nice time to be in Sydney, actually. I'd virtually live at the basement in Circular Quay, and Tommy would be on every other week sort of thing as well. He was still living in Sydney then, and
sure.
Phil would play with him quite a bit as well. So saw some amazing gigs there. So
yeah, it would have been a great time.
It was really good in Sydney then, and Sydney's just about had it now.
It's funny,
I'm
I
sorry
spent
to say.
a few days there around mid-January this year. We went to see a show at the Opera House.
Right. Who was that?
Gillian Welsh and Dave Rawlings.
Oh, fabulous.
Which was so nice.
Gee.
And we stayed in the thick of it. We stayed at Circular Quay with the family for a few days, and it just felt really bizarre. Like it just felt like one giant shopping mall, and like there was no one from Sydney there anymore. It felt like it was just tourism and, rich folk who drive around in fancy cars. And
that's about it, Pete.
So we sort of, enjoyed getting out to Newtown and Surrey Hills and stuff like that. That sort of restored some faith in the city for us. But it was because I've played at the basement a few times as well. And that's, I think it was on the end of its kind of tether at that stage, but you could tell that there was history in the room. You could tell there was so much. I can't believe what was there. It's just so sad culturally, just exactly as you said, because back in the day it was just so good, and the diversity of music, soul, R&B, blues. So many great local players in Sydney then who were really firing, and bands as well. They were working all the time. And then so many international acts that play there as well too. So that's a real shame because I think that sort of Sydney's had the heart ripped out of it, unfortunately. Yeah, well, it's
such a shame.
It's becoming a problem everywhere. Like everywhere.
You're right, Pete. Yeah.
Venues are getting pushed out further and further because, I guess, rent and then noise. Insurance.
Public liability.
Oh, it's totally
just
killing
endless,
it.
Isn't it? It's just...
Like I went to the Rainbow in Melbourne, I can't think when it was, maybe 6 months ago, because they had massive noise issues years ago. Yeah. And they found ways around it,
right?
Like, double doors and, noise, like really thick fabric they draw across the room when there's a band on. And
gotcha.
They ask everyone to be really nice and polite when they leave the venue. And it's like, well, you move to a cool area.
Exactly.
Because it's cool. There's music. If you come in and complain about the cool, it's not cool anymore.
Oh, you got it, Pete. Because, a bit like the basement. I lived in Melbourne for a long time around Paran, and the Continental had music on all the time. Yeah. The SB.
Yep.
I can't believe the gigs. I said to someone the other day, I saw Mossy do a gig just in the front bar at the SB.
Great.
It was 93.
Fantastic.
And he just released Petrolhead. So it's just drums and bass and Mossy.
Great.
And, I've never seen Mossy play like that. It was just, he killed it.
Yeah.
In every respect, the sound. And, we just walked in off the street, got some food and some Kildare. Oh, Mossy's playing. Great. And that's one of the gigs I'll always remember in my life.
Yeah.
So
that would have been great. I know I love to see Chisel do really well in these massive stadiums and stuff.
Absolutely.
So that's cool. But I think hearing that kind of music, that's a front bar kind of
you've
gig,
got it. That's it.
Where you just got a vocal PA because you don't need to put Mossy's guitar through.
No.
Maybe some kick drum. That's where the band's going to be its best, isn't it? Yeah,
totally. And he totally embraced that as well. That was, it was just, he loves to work hard, and he gave it 150% that night. It was just, but you go and see those things all the time. That was the thing. I've lost count of the number of things I would have seen at the Continental. They had so much jazz-related acts on as well too. But I guess the Corner Hotel's still going pretty well in Richmond there. Thank goodness. So I think Melbourne's still flying a bit of a flag.
Yep.
I sort of hope so, because I know everyone in Melbourne just dearly loves all the stuff you can go and see and values.
Yep.
So I think that's a bit different from Sydney now, though.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think there's money in different areas. I know that. Yeah. I think the entertainment industry in Melbourne is a vital part of its economy.
I think you're right.
And if they lose that, it's going to cut the city into shreds. So.
Completely. So look, I think it's a wonderful thing they've still got that going. I see Robin Ford's just played there.
Yeah.
He did the Nightcat, which I was quite surprised about. It's quite a small venue.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
But then I saw some footage, and he was loving it. You could see that, you know. So
I haven't been there for a while, but I remember seeing the band in the middle of the room.
Yeah, and
the crowds all around the band.
And that's what was happening, I noticed, with Robinson.
Sure.
It's like, wow, this is kind of wild.
Yeah. Sitting behind Robin's Dumble,
and he brought it too.
Yeah.
Jeez. Plus another Fender running along with it just to give it a bit of spread, as Robin does.
I'm sure he would have been in that Ian Moss sort of territory, I imagine, like with volume.
I think so. I mean, Robin plays loud, Yeah. I did the support for Robin in 2011 in Melbourne.
Oh, great.
Yeah, he had Mike Landau with him as well.
Oh,
and that was quite a real buzz just to be a fly on the wall there, and thinking, well, this is petrifying, but I'm going to learn from this, So, but those guys play loud, and good loud. So
there's a difference, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking a bit about that earlier, I suppose. It's an art, isn't it? You know. I mean, Kevin Borich is amazing at that.
Oh yeah.
He kills it.
Yeah.
But it's an art. Mossy does that so well.
And if the song needs to climax and the band's up there, it's a wonderful thing. There's nothing else you can't replace that with a Kemper or all these virtual instruments. You need
something about valves pushing, isn't there?
Speakers in the room.
Yep.
Valves getting hot. Yeah. There's something about it.
Yeah. I saw some gig. I think it was Mike Landau. He'd done some gigs in Texas there, I think, with Eric Johnson, and someone yelled out something, heckling or something like that, and said, "There'll be no modelling up here. It's all God-given tubes and stuff like that." I was killing myself laughing as he said it with a real wry look on his face.
Oh, that's great.
But
I remember seeing I caught Dick Dale once in LA.
Oh wow.
That was one of the loudest gigs I've ever been to. I think he had two Showmans.
Oh.
And he had the the reverb tank suspended from the ceiling. Because, if that sat on the stage, it just would have been going off its head all day. So this, reverb tank, 2 Showmans. It was insane.
Wow.
So good.
Wow.
Yeah, that was one of my other gigs I'll never forget.
Oh, I bet.
Checking Dick Dale out.
Yeah, and because that sound and that touch that he had, it'd be a bit like Link Ray or something, I imagine, in my mind or something, just the original pioneers, of something that was so new, yet probably influenced Jeff Beck and so many other players.
Oh, 100%.
So,
yeah.
Well, that's really something, Pete.
Yeah, and it's funny how we've sort of mentioned today how you've got this broad appreciation for different styles and trying to embrace it all, whereas someone like Dick's just like, no, this is what I do.
Yeah.
And that's his whole career. His life is just going, like...
It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah. But I guess if you're that good at doing that one thing, you know, I just think that's so special. It's a bit like Keith Richards or something, isn't it? You know? It's so defined what someone like Keith does,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you perceive yourself there, Pete, because I've heard you do a lot of diverse things as well. So is that something that you have as an outlook a bit yourself?
Yeah.
Or would you, how do you view it?
Yeah, it's a funny one. I think I'm similar. I do love all genres, especially rootsier, ones that you can play on guitar.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm, and I guess I pick up on, I guess just part of me wants to learn different things, to keep learning, to keep your fingers active, just so I'm not playing pentatonic all day, every day.
For sure.
I want to get out of that little box.
Yeah.
And then when I write songs, I don't know, I try not to even put them into a basket. I just try and go, oh, this is the lyric. Where's this going to fit? Is it going to fit with this like Americana thing, or is it going to sort of sit in this shuffle territory? Or I don't know. I guess for me, music between the 40s and 60s was kind of like, I know there's elements 70s, 80s, of course, even contemporary, but I know there's so much cool stuff going on in that period where it was fresh and new and exciting, and
completely.
And cultures were, mingling, and there's so much cool music coming out. So, for me, I think as a player, I try and pick up as much as I can, and then when I'm doing a performance or writing, or I try and let go of all that, like unlearn everything, and then just try and be as fluid as I can, if that makes any sense.
Oh, absolutely. And I totally hear what you're saying there about that period of time you mentioned there too. Everything just sounded so fresh, didn't it?
Oh.
Whether it's the Allman Brothers or, hearing Clapton with Mail, that's, iconic. And then hearing guys like B.B. King playing at that period too, which in that 60s period was just, wow.
Yeah.
Just so good.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too. I think that's possibly a high point with jazz as well, really.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'll often read that Robin Ford talks about, I think the main genre he probably listens to is jazz other than blues, but it's that period leading up to, say, the end of the 60s, really, that's really pretty special with your Wayne Shorters and Coltrane and all those sort of things.
It was just exciting.
Yeah, completely. And it was very fresh and new, wasn't it? And
I guess, thanks to Les for designing, the pickup.
Yeah, exactly.
We get to hear guys like Grant Green and Charlie Christian through an electric guitar, or even like that Django stuff when he started plugging in.
Yep.
Far out.
Oh, yeah. So, I totally understand what you're saying there, because I don't know whether contemporary stuff, I mean, you can obviously see the influences by stuff now, but that original source period is just, I find you always seem to want to go back to that as well. And it's funny because even with some fusion stuff, I'll go back to and listen to Blow by Blow or Wired, that mid-70s thing.
Yep.
And it still sounds so fresh and raw in a way which, you know, the 80s knocked a lot of edges off things and it was very slick, obviously, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't even think they were using click tracks necessarily then in that period. So that's got something to do with it as well.
And I guess the organic nature of recording to tape.
Yep.
Synthesizers were probably unobtainable.
Yep. Yeah.
So it was just basically analog, real instruments in real time.
Yep.
Everyone reacting in the room.
Yep.
You know, that human interaction, I think, was still pretty strong.
Yeah.
You know, probably just capturing live performances as they would do at a venue or at a
completely.
You know.
Yep.
At a gig.
Yeah, it wasn't the Pro Tools, you know, multiple performances, wasn't it at all? It was just that's what went down and that's how it is, you know.
Yeah, it's magic.
Yeah, and I guess that sense of guitar tone too. I don't know what you think, but I mean, there's so much modelling going on now, and it is getting very good. But yeah, there's something about the personality of all these great players too that came through in that earlier period as well, isn't there? You know, that it's just like a beacon, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know?
And I think even like the availability of things, like, you know, to hear, say, Lonnie Mack on a magnetone.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that's a sound. But he wouldn't have got that if he just went to the local music store and picked up a Fender.
Yep.
Like he got that magnetone and his Flying V and just like, here it is, bang.
Yep.
So I think the availability of everything now is just so...
It's immediate, isn't it?
Immediate.
Yeah.
And we don't get to know the depths of things enough. You know, like we go, I can do a C. Ray Vaughan tone, no worries. 2 seconds later, you've dialed it in.
Yep.
But you're not actually getting the nuance or the appreciation or
completely.
I don't know this. You know, maybe I'm just sounding a bit old, but I definitely think that
not at all.
Learning the ability or the lack of ability that a certain instrument or amplifier or a pedal has draws out the character of that thing.
You put it very well there.
Yeah.
It's funny because I can remember periods when people didn't have much gear, you know, but you had to work at what you've had, really get to know it, and extract things from that, which is exactly what you're talking about there. It's funny, I'm at that point too now where I see there's a lot of people I know now who have a lot of instruments, for example, and amazing instruments, some of them too. I don't think I've ever had anything that valuable or iconic, but I'm kind of happy to try to explore what I've got and accept what I've got, I think, now, and go, well, there's a character there. Some of these instruments have been on really rough journeys with me here and there, and, you know, it's been with you for 30 years or whatever else, and you know it like, you know, really, really well. Yeah. And the response you get from that instrument as well, I suppose. So
it sure is a trap. I think it's just in this consumer world we live in.
Totally. Yeah.
You know, you open your phone up, all of a sudden you've got a shop advertising this new thing, or
completely.
YouTube is like trying to sell you this new thing. It's like, well, that looks tempting, and then all of a sudden you get all these YouTube influencers, and oh my god, like it's such a trap. So I'm totally with you on that. Let's just learn what we have and use it.
I think it's ultimately a lot more rewarding, isn't it? Because it goes back to that thing of finding your own voice or doing something that's, you know, I mean, what is anyone at the end of the day, you know? But I think that's a better pathway to try to get to that stage, if I could think of it like that, anyway, you know, rather than. I'll just dial in that Stevie Ray Vaughan setting, you know. I've got to import all these profiles that someone's made into my Kemper or something like that, you know.
Yeah, it's a wild time. And I imagine it'd be different. Like if I was starting to play now, if I was 18, 19 and started to do gigs, I probably would have a different opinion.
I'm sure.
I'd probably go, no, this Kemper's great.
Yes.
I can control the volume.
Yep.
And I can turn up a gig and it's going to sound the same every night.
Yep.
You know, and it's going to weigh nothing. I can fly with it. Like there are so many pros. So, and if they don't know about, heavy valve amps that could break down at any moment, how loud and spiky they can be, and I'm sure they look at us going, "Oh, what weirdos! What are they using all this old stuff?" I'm sure that
it's
there are shoes on the other foot.
Yeah, it's an interesting time because I'm teaching quite a few younger guys too, and I think they've got a pretty fresh perspective in that they'll go with whatever's there. I don't think they have the means to do otherwise. That's the other thing.
Yep.
So that Boss Katana is a very attractive package, and I can certainly see that. And they're lots of fun.
Yeah.
And in the hands of a good player, wow, you can get some great sounds out of them too.
Yeah.
So, and it could even be a pedal platform or something, even if someone wants it to be. But I think that they don't have that back history of all necessarily of playing with valve amps, experiencing it live, going to hear gigs.
Yeah.
So that immediacy is not there for them. So it's a whole new reality, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
And that's a generational thing that I just go, sure.
Yeah.
That's because it'll be totally different for them.
Yeah.
Compared to, what we've perhaps gone through there.
Yeah.
And aspired to.
Yeah. Or even just like looking at an instrument, you can sort of tell what it's going to do or how it's going to inspire you. Like you look at that reverse headstock Strat and a Marshall, it's like, all right, cool. Bring out the fuzz pedal and let's go to Monterey, But
great.
But sometimes that's part of its charm.
Yes.
It
was
funny, I was listening to a podcast with, I can't think of her name. She's got a signature Ernie Boyle guitar.
Right.
Her name escapes me right now. Saint Vincent. St. Vincent.
Yes.
I was hearing a podcast with her, and when they were asking her, let's build a signature guitar, she didn't want to have anything that was remotely familiar. She didn't want it to be a Strat because you pick it up and you're either going to do Jimmy or you're going to do like Gilmore or Clapton or something.
Yep.
Or a Telly, you're going to do some twang or you're going to... So she wanted to design a guitar that had not been done before, which I think was a really interesting perspective because you're not going to have that instant kind of, let's try that, let's do this. It's a fresh place to start from. I think that's a really cool idea.
It is, isn't it? It's very novel. You might be like me in this sense. I guess I associate certain sounds with instruments and therefore that becomes a personality in its own right, doesn't it? With the Les Paul, I'll immediately start thinking of, Clapton or Jimmy Page, and all
Peter
those
Green.
different Peter Green and all those kind of guys, exactly. So that instrument, it's really funny too because various tally sounds, any of these guitars, there's various players that there's offshoots, isn't there, different angles with respective instruments, I've always liked Robin Ford's tally sound for, in my mind a lot, which is a bit different from a few other things. So it's funny how you'll associate a certain angle on sound with an instrument. I do that anyway. Yeah. It's a bit crazy.
Whereas to hear him on the old Fender Elite, was it?
Serious?
That sounded great too.
It did.
Through the red knob twin and bang.
Exactly. Yeah. And
take that.
Exactly. But it's funny, isn't it, how certain instrument or the way various players will approach it, that'll inform your concept there. And yet for someone like, say, St. Vincent, they're not looking for those references or they don't necessarily have them. So they just want something that's totally new, I guess, Yeah.
And I think they wanted the customer as well to also just find their own voice within that guitar.
Yeah.
There's no preconceived ideas of how it's going to work. And it still looks good. Like you don't look at it going, geez, that's a weird looking guitar.
Yeah, I think I know the shape that you're referring to.
It's kind of like an Explorer with 3 mini humbuckers.
Yeah, it is a cool looking guitar.
Yeah.
But then I can also think of someone like Jack White.
Yes.
And he played at the Odeon, I believe, only a month ago.
Yeah, back in November, was it?
Yeah, sorry, it was a bit early, yeah. And I noticed Fender have designed an amp in conjunction with him.
Yeah.
And it seems amazing.
The Pano verb.
Yeah, and he seems to have this one foot in the past and
Yes.
in history, but he's also got a bit more of a futuristic sort of outlook as well, I kind of know.
Yeah.
You know, and
Got that crazy scientist vibe, especially
he
with
seems
that
to.
Telecaster he's got now, the 3 different pickups and the Bigsby and the kill switch.
Yeah.
And the Acoustasonic I think he had as well.
That's right.
Different pickups set up in that.
Which I find that approach a bit intriguing because, you know, I can almost hear the Yardbirds in there somewhere and then something into the future on top of all that. You know?
It's a great... you can definitely tell that he's an appreciator and a respecter of history. But, the influence... he seems very contemporary and willing to put a strange fuzz pedal on, like make a weird sound, and they go, "Cool, that's the new sound." That's,
yeah.
So it's
it's interesting, isn't it, when you find people doing that? I always thought Jeff Beck was a bit more exploratory than a lot of my diehard guitar heroes, even Gilmour to some degree in a way too. Like he used a 335, which I'd never seen him play before on Luck and Strange, that most recent album. You know?
Right.
And it sounded amazing.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I wish I heard you do a bit more of that because it sounded so good, you know?
Yeah, right. So, I didn't realise that.
Yeah. It's killer sound.
Cool.
So
speaking of gear and things like that, we have to talk about your time at Hey Hey It's Saturday. I'm not sure if he's happy to talk about stuff.
Of course.
Still. Yeah.
Whatever, of course.
Because I reckon most guitar players have seen you at some stage, especially my age.
Okay.
Have gone, I saw him every Saturday night. You know, I saw Simon on the screen.
For better or worse, you were stuck with it.
Yeah. I guess one aspect of that I'd like to talk about is like, because you were covering lots of different styles and genres, and I guess keeping it within TV studio volume.
Not always.
Not always?
No.
Like tell me about your rig and your setup and how did it develop or did it?
Yes, I think it did. It's funny because I moved to Melbourne in 1990 and I had a Kitty Hawk rig, which was a bit of a poor man's Dumble because they were the wholesalers in Germany and Dumble hooked up an arrangement with them. So at any rate, Darren Hill was the Australian distributor for Kitty Hawk up in Launceston.
Yeah. City Music.
Yes, City Music. And Darren was a great guy, great player, really good player. And so I ended up with a Kitty Hawk rig. So I took that over originally and that was going pretty well. I think the curse of 90s shred was starting to come on. So I think I had a Kasha Rock mod which replaced the Kitty Hawk Quattro preamp.
Right.
And then not long after, I think a year into the gig with Hey Hey, I managed to hook up with Marshall and they approached me about doing some stuff with them. Yamaha were the wholesaler at that stage for Marshall. So, and it was the 30th anniversary head that I got for that gig.
Sure.
Which was actually a really versatile head, actually. It worked really well there. Mm-hmm. It's quite a flat-sounding amp, actually, in hindsight, as opposed to a Plexi or a Marshall Major or something like that. And it had MIDI on it. Plus, I had Dave Ulbrich doing quite a bit of work at that stage on tweaking gear. I was very lucky to hang out with a few guys in Melbourne, Jack Jones. Ross Clunes was another person that helped me enormously with just trying to develop sound, a bit of a concept with all those things. Mm-hmm. So I had Dave do a fair bit of work on gear over the period of time. So I think it was mainly that head for quite a while. Now, Dave had modded that, just fundamental things like stripping back compression and so the amp had breathed a bit better and just tweaking a few EQ sort of things and cleaned up a loop on the amp. So that worked really well because it ran on MIDI, and MIDI was really handy in that situation because there'd be a lot of sounds that would change as well. So it was very flexible. That was kind of good. I didn't have the money to go for a Bradshaw sort of rack or anything crazy with switches, and that was just nuts. Whereas some of the other guys really went down that path. And then I think there was a MIDI preamp that Marshall put out, the JMP1. I used that on various occasions. And they had a power amp thing. So it sort of fluctuated between that 30th anniversary head, and I think that was the main rig for that, and a quad box. At one stage I did run a load box as well. And it's funny because we had to back Roger Daltrey doing Pinball Wizard, and I had the load box operating then. And it was funny because it wasn't a total dummy load arrangement, so I still had to have it going off to a speaker as the dummy load. It was pretty much a jug element in Dave's box, so it was pretty primitive. So I remember sticking a speaker cab, I think it was Red Simon's actually. I stuck his box in a drum case at the back of the room, and it was like, that amp was full blown, like it was going 100 watts.
Wow.
So it was roaring, on this particular thing. It was as loud as you could get it.
Yep.
And then of course it slayed back into a power amp. And Roger wanted it, cranked. So
having Pete Townsend as your
exactly.
Guy,
so it was really, really loud.
Yeah.
And no one said anything, so just sort of went with it. And but every time Roger would move the mic, you'd hear the gate open and the guitar would just flood it.
Wow.
But and there was room mics everywhere, so it bled really nicely into everything. So it was great. So that's the only occasion that ever happened like that. But you tried to play out wherever you could, so that it didn't sound like a too controlled sort of TV sort of band scenario. You wanted to have it feel a bit more real,
Yeah, and you would have learnt so much from that. How long was the show on the air?
I did it for 9 years.
Yeah.
The show, I think it ran for something like 29 years.
Wow.
They had another go at Daryl tried to resurrect it in 2010 and did another year.
Yeah.
It didn't happen, so that fell apart then. But I did that for 9 years, so I think something like 360 shows.
Incredible.
In TV world, that's a fair bit. And
what does that look like day to day? Like, are you guys having rehearsals and stuff?
Well, not really. No, it'd be just on the day.
Yep.
Of course, if it was someone important, like B.B. King or Bonnie Raitt, you'd be given a tape and you'd really want to try and do some homework, so you don't look like a total fool.
Yeah.
And, and just trying to get remotely close to, oh, gosh, how am I going to make this feel reasonable, and there's Hutch Hutchinson standing right next to me playing bass. It's like, right, I better, Bonnie Raitt's over there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and I think we were pretty green. We were coming into the gig, So we certainly learned a lot, and I think the band got a lot better at playing songs. But I think there was a lot of luck involved there as well, Pete. It's just one of those sort of things. I guess everyone read music pretty competently, so you kind of needed that.
Yes.
There was a lot of stuff that was pretty impromptu that you just wouldn't have had time to learn. That's all,
Yep.
So
I imagine having a great grasp of your instrument and the ability to interact with other players and to read a situation would be pretty vital. Like, having the ability to read what's in front of you, but also that, like, if it goes off the rails somewhere, you need to follow the singer or follow the leader,
and that would happen. Yep. Not very often, but occasionally there'd be. I don't think we had too many train wrecks, thank goodness. Because most of it was live.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. But you're right there. But it's interesting because I look at some of the TV bands that were happening in America, and it's like a whole other level. You know? Like you look at Letterman, and there was a show that David Sanborn had, I think, called Night Music, and he had like Omar Hakim on drums, and I'm trying to remember. I can't think of the guitar player's name, but it was, and these guys are just everything no charts anywhere. They've memorised everything, and the band just sounds phenomenal, you know.
Just sleek, yeah.
And they're playing it, you know, just such deep grooves and everything, you know. So that was the aspiration, I guess, to try to get a bit closer to that. But oh gee, that's a whole other level, the way those guys play, and you know, they're just so good, you know. So we were pretty green, I guess. You know, we were all pretty young when we started doing that gig. So and it's funny because you probably wouldn't have been able to get the best players in Australia, I suppose, at that time to be able to do the gig necessarily, you know. So
I was going to say budgets must have been different to the American shows at the time.
Totally, you know, and some guys would never commit, you know.
So,
but it was a great learning opportunity, and just to actually have a chance to play with those people. You know, if Chubby Checker's telling you what to do with your right hand, that's what Chuck does. You do it straight away. You know? So, you know, all downstrokes, just like Chuck. No worries, you got it.
Great.
So, and that's great. I'm really grateful for that opportunity, you know. So,
and I guess, you know, it was recorded medium. Like there'd be you know, you can still look back and go, oh, cool, check out this gig. Like it wasn't one of those, you know, like so many shows that I recall as being fantastic. Like all of a sudden you might see something pop up. Oh, it wasn't as good as I remember it, or I'm glad I've got that footage to recall. But I guess you've got 9 years of, you know, like great memories on tape, basically.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, they were good, you know. I mean, but it's funny, you know, like I guess as you hopefully get better or your awareness develops, you certainly honed in a lot more to feel and the nuances of time and, you know, and I guess that's all part of doing it, of course, you know, but so I find it very hard to not look at any of it from a critical lens, really do, in every respect, you know. You know,
I think it's an artist's definitely a nightmare or a challenge that we all have to overcome, isn't it? Like that overcritical, you know.
Yeah, I guess you're right there. I mean, if you had your time again, you'd probably, oh boy, I would have done that differently, or I would approach it differently, or I was just not in the ballpark on that one, you know. So I guess that's that learning thing, isn't it, you know?
Yeah. But it's the snapshot as well, you know. Like
it is. I've got to be honest there. So but it's, you know, I mean, so many people, just watch that show, and it always surprises me, you know, how many people would have seen it, you know, players in one thing or another. So
I definitely would have been a big influence. I know that I know there's some stat about the Wiggles being the most influential band, you know, because of all these kids growing up watching the Wiggles play music. So I'm sure a similar thing would have happened, you know, like seeing you guys every week on telly would have influenced a lot of people.
I guess it's funny now. I just view that as playing your part, I suppose, generationally, because when I was young, I'd look up to guys like Jim Kelly and, you know, whoever was doing sessions locally or whatever else, Rex Go, and certainly guys like Mossy and all that. But, I guess it fit, you know, with what we did. It was just that point in time generationally, you know. It certainly wasn't great, but it plays its part. You know, that's how I view it, Pete.
Yeah, you know? That's great.
I have every reason just to put it in that perspective, I think, you know.
Excellent.
So,
cool, mate. Well, I'd taken up a good chunk of your time today, and you've got to rush off for some lessons. So thanks very much for having a chat.
Pete. Yeah.
And hopefully we can do it again.
I'd love to.
On stage sometime.
That'd be great. Blow. So thank you very much, Pete.
Cool. Thank you, Simon.
Pleasure.
Thanks for listening, folks, to another episode of Say It With Guitars. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the podcast, share it around to your mates, leave a good review, and hopefully we'll see you next time.